Bonjour French 1. The topic for today's video is the idea of negation, which we actually talked a little bit about whenever you learned the difference between il y a, there is, and il n'y a pas de, for there is not. Negation is basically the idea of making a sentence negative. So ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make a sentence negative in English, let's start there. It's usually pretty simple. We just insert the words do or does and not, and then you usually put it before the verb. So you change a sentence from I have a book to I do not have a book, or he has a book to he does not have a book, and that makes the sentence negative. In the French language, however, to make a sentence negative, you have to add the words ne and pas. And the really strange thing about the words ne and pas is that they have to go around the verb in your sentence. So for example, if you have somebody writing a sentence of I have a book, and by the way, don't miss this note right here, the idea that ne can become an apostrophe before a word that starts with a vowel. We talked about it in the il n'y a pas de video as well. But if you have somebody saying j'ai un livre, I have a book, and you wanted to make that negative, you would have to put your ne and pas in the sentence, and you'd have to make sure you put it in the right place, which is around the verb. Now, if you forgot what your verb is, remember those forms of avoir from the other video from tonight's homework. This is our form of avoir. This is the have part. So you have to put your ne in front of it, which you'll notice it starts with a vowel, so I changed it to an apostrophe, and your pas after it. When you do that, you end up with je n'ai pas de livre, which is I do not have a book. The not have is right here because you've got a ne pas around have. It makes it negative. Of course, if you want to say that he has a book and change it to he doesn't have a book, same thing happens here. You take your he has a book sentence, you put in a ne pas. You have to make sure that you put it around the word have so that you're making the word have negative and saying he does not have a book. Now the only other thing I need to point out to you is I need you to notice how the article changed before the item. Up till now I've been teaching you that the article that comes before book is un, because in order to say a book, with book being masculine, you have to say un livre. There's a really weird rule in the French language that says that the word pas can never have an indefinite article after it, such as un or une or de. Anytime you would be writing a sentence and you would have an une, or a de after the word pas, you actually change it to de. And I know that sounds very strange. This is going to be one of those things where we just need to do a few examples to show you how that works. So let's go ahead and try a few. Here I've got the sentence je danse bien. This means I dance well. If I wanted to change that to indicate what is probably pretty true and say I don't dance well, you'd have to put in a ne and pas into your sentence. Now, the key there is recognizing that the verb in the sentence is to dance, and then putting your ne and pas around it. And you end up with the complete sentence of je ne danse pas bien, which is I do not dance well. Notice that the not part has to go around the verb dance for it to make sense in the French language. Here's another example. What if we have nous avons des posters? Nous avons des posters means we have some posters. But let's try to make this sentence negative. That's going to require the help of those two magical words ne and pas. You'll have to know where they go, which means you have to know which of these four words is your verb. Keep in mind from your verb chart or from the fact that you could translate it that this is the word have, and that's your verb. So you have to put your ne in front of the verb and your pas after. And you end up with something that looks like this. But if you really want to write the sentence correctly, don't forget that if ne is followed directly by a word that starts with a vowel, then you actually drop that e and do an apostrophe instead. It's kind of like doing a contraction in English and changing it from cannot to can't and getting rid of a couple letters and putting an apostrophe in its place. But hopefully you'll remember to do that anytime you find yourself putting a ne in front of something that starts with a vowel. Nous n'avons pas de posters means we don't have any posters. Here's our last example. Ils ont un ordinateur means they have a computer. Here's our word for they. Here's our they form of avoir to say they have, and then here's our word for a computer. Ladies and gentlemen, please notice that whenever I want to make it negative, as always, I have to put in a ne and a pas. Then I have to make sure that I realize that that ne is coming before a word that starts with a vowel, so I make it an apostrophe. And something I forgot to mention here on the poster sentence is don't forget also that pas can never be followed by un. Pas can never be followed by une. Pas can never be followed by de. So I actually changed it to pas de. And then, if you really want your brain to explode and you want to go the extra mile and be an A++ French student, you'll recognize that de is coming before a word that starts with a vowel, and you can actually change that de to a D apostrophe. So your total sentence, once you get through adding in your ne pas, changing your article from on to de, and then dropping those vowels and putting in apostrophes, is ils n'ont pas d'ordinateur, for they don't have a computer. It's really complicated, which is why we'll have to practice this a lot in class for you to get it down pat. But don't worry, you'll have lots of chances to do so and ask questions.